All right, so good evening to everybody that has joined us today. I'm very happy to be here. For those of you who this is their first time, my name is Dan Kaufmann. I'm a research assistant professor here at Department of Neurology at the university. And I've been researching migraine and the effect of stress on migraine for several years. And currently now I'm researching musculoskeletal pain. And I have a private practice where I'm using complementary interventions such as hypnotherapy, biofeedback to help people that are struggling with tension type headaches and migraine disorders. And usually for those of you who haven't been here before, on the fourth week of the month in a headache school, what we try to do is to provide skills and techniques so that people can actually benefit from beside knowledge that is important, of course, but we wanted to offer people some really simple to use skills and simple to use techniques so people really can, after that 1 hour, can take some basic skills with them that are easily to use and they could apply them to their lives. And so usually on the second week of the month, there's always going to be a lecture. In the fourth week, we wanted to create some workshop kind of intervention that we can actually provide specific skills and techniques. And what we're going to do today is going to be, it's not going to be a skill per se, it's going to be mainly an experiential kind of, we're going through an experiential thing because we're going to be talking about the PolyVagal theory, which I found to be something that is extremely important. First of all, for people in general to know, but also people that are living with migraine. And I decided that I wanted to cover this whole idea of polyvagal theory and to really give just a beginning experience of the different states so that people can take that with them and identify those states in their lives, as I'm going to explain shortly. And of course, if people have questions, feel free to stop me or ask them during my presentation. This is, we wanted to have a more of a conversation like versus a lecture. So I'm going to share my screen, and just people just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Give me a thumbs up. So you see the presentation? Okay, great. All right. So what we're going to be talking about today is an introduction. This is really for 1 hour. It's going to be very complicated to give an exhaustive description of the polyvagal theory. I mean, we could spend days on that incredible theory, but we are going to be talking a little bit about what the polyvagal theory is and how we can use it to make sense of our stresses and post-trauma, which is associated with migraine. And this is why I wanted to start, before we talk about the polyvagal theory, to talk about this whole stress and migraine connection, because as we know that migraine is associated with other conditions such as general anxiety and depression. We know that these are bidirectional. There is a bidirectional connection. One fuels the other. Of course, when we're experiencing migraines and we're experiencing these uncontrolled or these head pains that are just coming out of the blue, of course, it's not going to make us feel very safe. So naturally, we're going to be anxious of when is the next time we're going to have an attack. And especially when we are not able to fully control or mitigate those attacks, then we might be demoralized, feel anxious, feel depressed, feeling anger. And of course, the other way, when the more anxious we are, the more depressed we are, the more the pain is going to be severe compared to when we're, as much as we can in a good mood. So there is a bidirectional connection between migraine and stress-related disorders. We also know when we look at the literature of the stressors or the triggers that initiate attack. We know that emotional stress has been reported as a migraine trigger in several studies. There are several triggers that are considered the most predominant for migraine, and stress is definitely considered one of them. We also know, based on many studies that have been done in migraine population, is that traumatic experiences like childhood adverse events are very much connected with occurrence of chronic pain in general, but also migraine in particular. There's a very much, not everybody, of course, and I want to emphasize it's not that every person with migraine necessarily has a history of traumatic experiences, but a lot of the people that are living with migraine have a higher incidence of past adverse events compared to those who are not living with migraine. So it's like there is a connection between those occurrences of traumatic experiences in childhood or in the past and the occurrence of migraine specifically, or chronic pain generally later on in life. So when we look at the fact that we have past trauma or chronic stress or adverse childhood experiences, all of those are pretty much predisposition to an autonomic system dysregulation. I'm going to talk about the autonomic system in a little while, but this is the survival mechanisms that when we are going through traumatic experiences or prolonged periods of time when we really stress or experience some really adverse childhood experiences, it's like our survival system gets into play much stronger. And so later on in life, it's like this whole system that looks for cues of danger becomes faulty in a way that it keeps being focused on where the danger is. We also know that autonomic system dysregulation has been linked with migraine. The two are connected. And even though talking about the specific correlation is not the scope of this lecture today, but what I am wanting to share with you is that because of this connection of past trauma, stress, child experiences, and migraine, it might be that that connection has something to do with dysregulation of autonomic system. And so maybe by better understanding our autonomic state, by better understanding when in our lives which states we are on, we can better understand ourselves and better navigate between those different states. When we can better navigate between those different autonomic states, we can help ourselves become much more regulated. And of course, there's other interventions to help with autonomic system dysregulation that is outside the scope of this talk. So what is this autonomic system that I'm constantly talking about? We do know that the autonomic system is shared with all human beings. It is our bio-behavioral platform. It is that system that is sensitive enough to detect any cues from our environment that we're living in. And based on those cues, that autonomic system can help regulate all of our internal organs, such as the heart, such as the lungs, such as the stomach, and other, in order for us to meet the demands of the environment. So it's like the system, it like helped us mitigate and connect between what is happening outside and how do we respond to that by making the changes inside. And the goal of the autonomic system is to make sure that we survive in times of danger and that we thrive when there's no danger and we're in times of safety. Usually when we talk about the autonomic system, a lot of people are talking about these two main branches. One is the sympathetic, written here in red on the left, which is the fight or flight, so that when we are detecting threat, when the system detects threat, it's making all of those internal changes so that we can cope with the threat by either fighting or fleeing. And based on that, when we have a certain danger, then we have an increased heart rate, increased respiration, decrease in digestion, and so forth and so on. This is how the system responds and gets our bodies in line with what is happening in the environment. That's the sympathetic arm. The parasympathetic arm is then when there is no danger, and what we call it is a rest and digest. When we're just sitting, there is no danger, and we can actually inhibit all of those survivalistic response and engage in socially and in all sorts of activities with peers, families, and so forth and so on. So usually when people talk about the autonomic system, they talk about those two branches. In this talk today, I want to introduce a newer or more accurate classification, and that's the polyvagal theory. So the polyvagal theory provides a more up-to-date map of the autonomic system and the different states that we're in and that we go through on a daily basis. This theory was researched and created by Dr. Stephen Porges, and there's a lot of work that has been done on that. And this system, by understanding that, it provides us of a picture, how is it that we respond each and every moment to the environment at hand, what is happening to us, how does the system itself adapts to what is happening in the environment. And unlike what I mentioned in the last slide, that when we talk about the autonomic system, we talk about two main branches, the polyvagal theory actually talks about three biological pathways that are three different responses. And by understanding those different responses, we can better understand the ways that we operate in the environment and how we move in and out of those different states on a daily basis. As I mentioned before that, by better understanding those different states and how we got into them, we can better navigate what are the resources that got us, what are the triggers that got us in those states, and what are the resources that we can have to get us out of those states back to regulation. So a little bit more about the polyvagal theory. In order for us to really understand how those different states come to mind, we need to first understand that there is some hierarchy in those states. We don't experience all of these states simultaneously. We experience those states in a hierarchical manner. The reason is because those different states were developed evolutionary. So in order for us to understand those different states, we need to kind of take a little bit of a deep into understanding how the autonomic system was created in evolution. So as I mentioned, the autonomic system is a system that is designed to help all creatures respond to the environment and adapt to the environment. And the whole purpose, as I mentioned, is to survive. The oldest system that was created, the oldest autonomic system, is called the parasympathetic dorsal vagal. And I'll explain a little bit more what dorsal means. But that system is the oldest system that was developed. And in order to survive, it used immobilization. So when a creature was faced with a danger, the system completely shut down in order to conserve energy. And it's like the whole organism was completely immobilized as if it was dead. And we have shreds of evidence to that, like when we see an opossum that just completely freezes or does nothing, and it's like it looks as if it's dead. This is a state of shutting down or immobilization. It's like when some animals kind of play dead, kind of in the common jargon. And that's the oldest system that was created about 500 million years ago. After that, a newer system was created to better adapt with the environment, and that's the sympathetic system, which was created around 400 million years ago. And it was created next, and it gave the organism the ability to move or to mobilize in order to survive in danger. And when I say to mobilize, the organism can either flee, run away, or use mobilization to fight, which is why we call that sympathetic system the fight or flight response. And that's a system that is newer than the oldest system, which is the dorsal vagal. And after that, we have a newer system, which was developed around 200 million years ago. And that's, again, the parasympathetic system, but it is the ventral vagal, not the dorsal vagal, which is the oldest system. The newest system, which is the ventral vagal, gives us the ability to engage and co-regulate with other human beings or with other animals. So for example, we know that animals that live kind of like in groups, if one of the animals in the group is detecting danger, because of co-regulation, other members of the groups are also going to be detecting danger. And so for us as humans, we also have the ability to co-regulate and either enjoy when someone is in a relaxed or safe spot. We can also feel more relaxed, even if we're entering that conversation stressed, or the other way around. When someone is feeling down or anxious or angry, we, because of co-regulation, we usually gonna feel that vibe, and we're also probably gonna be down or angry as well. So we all know that when we go into a room or a situation where everybody are angry, we're going to exit and being angry ourselves, or the other way around. So the hierarchy that I mentioned here of the autonomic system allows us to understand that inside ourselves, we also have all of these three states, and they exist in a hierarchy. We don't experience all of them, we experience them in an order, as I'm going to explain in a minute. Now, when we talk about the polyvagal theory, we have to talk about the vagus nerve, because that's the most important part of the polyvagal theory. The vagus nerve is the longest of the 12 cranial nerve. When I say cranial nerve, I'm meaning the nerves that originate in the brain. The reason that it's called the vagus nerve is because it comes from the word vagary, which means either traveling or wandering. And because that nerve is really long, it's like it travels so many different places in our body, from the brainstem to the heart, to the diaphragm, so to the digestive system, and to the face, and so forth and so on. So that vagus nerve is not, apparently one of the discovery of the polyvagal theory is that the vagus nerve is actually not only one nerve, it actually has two independent branches that are responsible for two of the autonomic states that I'm going to explain. This divide to these two distinct pathways allow the polyvagal theory its name as poly, meaning more than one, and vagal, which is connected to the vagus nerve. And that's why the theory is called polyvagal, because there's more than one branch of the vagus nerve. Those divisions of the vagus nerves are either the dorsal, when I say dorsal, mean that the location is closer to the back, or ventral, meaning the location of that branch is closer to the front. Those divisions are important because they are responsible for two distinct pathways. The dorsal vagal, the one that is closer to the back, is the oldest system. Its territory is below the diaphragm. It affects organs regulating digestion, and it is active when there is not enough energy. So this is why when the dorsal vagal is active, it causes immobilization, and that's the oldest system that exists. The other branch of the vagus, which is the ventral vagus, ventral towards the front, is the newest system. Its territory is above our diaphragm. It affects the heart, it affects breathing, facial muscle, and it is connected with social engagement. This vagus system, this vagus state is active. When it's active, it is signaling a sense of safety and causes us social engagement, homeostasis, and so forth and so on. So just by looking, just by looking at the hierarchy, as I mentioned, this whole PolyVagal theory indicates the hierarchy of the system. This is why I actually borrowed this idea from Deb Dana, who has wrote several books about the PolyVagal theory, and she's working with Stephen Porges. The reason that she used the ladder is because we go up and down that ladder in different times of the day, and it's important for us to understand the hierarchy of the states. So we usually start with the upper portion, the parasympathetic ventral vagal, which is the social engagement system. And this system is a system of safety, connection, health, restoration, social engagement, growth, and so forth and so on. That's the system that we previously mentioned as the rest and digest. We go down the ladder once we start feeling threatened, and so we start engaging in the sympathetic system, which is the system involved in mobilization. This is the system that helps us adapt to the environment by taking action. It's either we become aggressive or fight, or we flee, and the system helps us with active escape. When the threat is too much to handle and we don't have resources, we go further down the system to the bottom in here, shown here by the red, which is the parasympathetic dorsal vagal. This is the system that one word to describe it is collapse. This is the system of immobilization that it helps us in order, the way it helps us is by conserving energy. So it pretty much shuts everything down, and it helps us by protecting our energy stores. And we all go in and out of this system in a way that I'm going to explain in a minute. But just to show you, because I mentioned that there is the dorsal vagal towards the back and the ventral vagal towards the front, I just want you to take a look here in this picture that I use the same colors. If you notice the green branches in here, those are the ventral vagal. And as you can see that the location of this green is more towards the front. It is towards the front compared to the red. The green is the ventral vagal. The sympathetic, which is the mobilization, the fight or flight, is denoted here on the back, and the red, which is the parasympathetic dorsal vagal, is located more close to the back compared to the green, which is the ventral vagal. You don't need to memorize that. I just want to show you kind of like a schematics, just so that you can see why the system was called ventral versus dorsal. So now that I've hopefully convinced you that we have these three states of the autonomic system, what do we experience when each of these states come into play? So when the ventral vagal, starting with the right here in the green, when the ventral vagal is operating, what we experience is a sense of safety, self-regulation. We are connected to ourselves, we're connected to others and to the world. We acknowledge distress, but we're feeling very resourceful, very resourced, so we're able to handle everything at hand. It is usually a state that we're very much balanced and feel rejuvenated. Then the experience in the sympathetic system is, again, it's a mobilization system. So in that system, our experience is that we have to move. We have to either fight or run away. We feel alarmed. We feel hypervigilant. We feel maybe anxious. We feel out of sync. It's hard to talk to us because we're constantly kind of searching for danger. It's like we can't sit still. We need to remember that in that state, we're constantly trying to do something, resolve something. We can't just sit still. We need to do something that is mobilizing. The third system, or the collapse system shown here in the red, is the dorsal vagal. And the experience when this system gets into play is that we feel very withdrawn. It's like we're shutting down, we're depressed, we're collapsed, we feel completely numb, we feel disconnected from ourselves, we feel disconnected from everybody else, we feel completely lost, helpless, hopeless. It's like we want to completely disappear from the world. So we each and every one of us go in and out of those states during our lives and during the day. So let's see, how do we do that? As we mentioned, the system guides our experiences on a daily basis. Usually we first start in the ventral vagal, when we can use communication, social engagement, and so forth and so on, because we are social beings. And so that's usually the state that naturally we are if we have not experienced any severe traumatic experiences or abuse. Once we're in that state and there is a sense of danger or threat at hand, we move down to the sympathetic system, written here in yellow. So if we're trying to connect or communicate and it still doesn't work and we're still faced with a threat, we started to be mobilized. So we use all sorts of strategy to either confront the danger or just back off and run away in order for us to go back to green and return to safety. However, sometimes our attempts are not successful and we're not able to return to safety and the danger is still at hand. So when the danger is still at hand, we can't do anything, we can't run away, we go down into the dorsal system, the dorsal state, which again, what happens in this system, we're moving from mobilization to immobilization. We completely disconnect, we immobilize. It's like we completely shut down from any internal, external resources. We're completely lost. And it's like we can't find our ways back to safety and connection. Now, since this is only 1 hour and I can't explain too much, but of course there are ways to identify how do we get into each of those systems and how do we get out. But just as an example, if we do find ourselves in this immobilized state of dorsal vagal, one of the ways to move out is to start mobilizing ourselves slowly but surely. So if we find ourselves just can't move, can't do anything, I'm just wanting to crawl in bed and forget about the world, one of the ways to start getting out of that system is to start moving. Maybe take a shower, take a very, very short and very relaxed walk, but just do something to mobilize the energy. Once I'm able to mobilize the energy and be in the sympathetic system and I feel anxious, in order for me to move from this mobilized state into the state of safety is to actually engage in calming activities such as meditation, such as breathing, and so forth and so on. This is just a glimpse to let you know that this is not fixed state. We move in and out of them.